Welcome to Your Redemptive Birth, the birth story podcast where we hear directly from women who have journeyed from medicalized births to natural ones. I'm Sarah, and together we'll hear from women who have reclaimed birth. Their stories are marked by healing, strength, and deep trust in their bodies. If these stories resonate with you, I'd love for you to follow the podcast and leave a review so more women can find hope here. And for more redemptive birth tips and encouragement, come connect with me on Instagram at Your Redemptive Birth. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your healthcare team for guidance specific to your pregnancy and birth. This is Your Redemptive Birth. Hello, Kelly, and welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to hear your story. You're my second, sovereign birther. I don't know if you say free birth, sovereign birth. I know I saw something on your story where you're like,
yeah, I say sovereign, or I used to say free birth, but it's become a trigger word. So now I say sovereign birth.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, wonderful. Why don't we start by telling us a little bit about who you are, what you do in the world, and your family?
Sure. So I'm Kelly, and I'm a mother of 2 and pregnant currently, so almost a mother of 3. And I don't know that I like to identify myself as a stay-at-home mom because I feel like that doesn't get enough credit. But I am home with my babies every day, which is such a blessing. And I also do some online work as well and like content creation. And I'm just super passionate about, now that I've gone through it, I am very passionate about sovereign birth and just having a say in the entirety of your reproductive everything, because there's a lot to it. And I just feel like a lot of women don't realize that they can take charge.
Absolutely. Yes, you nailed it. Well, why don't you let everyone know really quick where they can find you on Instagram or wherever else online you would like them to know where to find you?
Sure. Yeah. So basically every social platform, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, they can find me at It's Life with Kelly and kind of share like a variety of things on there, from motherhood to health to being a sovereign woman and mother and everything that encompasses.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, I will link all of that down in the show notes as well, your Instagram handle and everything like that. So you've had a C-section, you've had a sovereign birth, and now you're pregnant with your third. So why don't you take us back to getting pregnant for the first time? Who are you? What did you believe about birth? How did you prepare? The choices you made? Wherever you want to take us back, you just take us back.
It's always really fun for me to reflect back, because leading into my first pregnancy, I thought I was aware. And I thought I had a good understanding of like having a voice for myself and like making really like conscious and intentional healthy choices. And now my oldest, he just turned 5 a couple days ago, and now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was like at the very tippy top of the iceberg. Like there was so much more I could have learned and educated myself on. And but I also really believe that everything unfolds how it's supposed to. And I know that I was supposed to walk through that path and that journey exactly how I did. So I give myself so much grace, and I had so keep that in mind as I tell my story, that I have zero negative thoughts towards any of what I've been through. So my husband and I actually were trying to conceive for a really long time. It saw fertility doctors, and we were diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which is the most frustrating label that can be given to you, I feel like. And we chose to not move forward with fertility treatments. I am a big believer, as you can tell in the way I'm explaining things, that everything happens for a reason. And so I felt, if I am meant to be a mother, it will happen for me. So we went through 3.5 years of infertility, and we ended up changing our water, and a month later we conceived.
Wow.
That was the only thing that changed. So got pregnant,
Yeah,
So
wait,
excited.
what did first of all, that must have been a really, really hard 3.5 years. And what a beautiful way to navigate that is to say, if I'm meant to be a mother, I will. But I'm sure, obviously, you were doing a lot of background work in your probably like health life. What did that look like for you? What were you changing? Maybe food wise, maybe just health in
Yeah.
general. What did that look like?
I
Toxin reduction.
Right. I mean, I was already on that path. Like I already
Mm-hmm.
was very conscious of like toxic load and, what you're putting in your body. Like I was already very passionate about like holistic health. And so I truly like wasn't changing a lot because I already kind of
Yeah.
lived that lifestyle. And so that was a big proponent of I'm already doing all the things I
Oh,
could be
yeah.
doing to like nourish my body and my husband's body. And we're already doing all the things. And so, having unexplained infertility like is just really frustrating because you're like, well, what else could I be doing?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so we chose to not do fertility treatments that just didn't align with me because I don't like to put foreign things in my body that are not natural. That's why when we changed our water to molecular hydrogen water, that felt
Yeah.
good because it's just water, right? And
Mhm.
so I felt good about
Yeah, I was gonna
that.
ask what the water change was. Was this like a system you had installed in your house, or was this like a
Yeah, it's just a countertop
gotcha, okay,
ionizer.
I see.
And so we did that 1 month later, conceived. And so that was what my body or my husband's body, who knows, or our bodies together needed. We just needed that. So, but when you've gone through infertility, especially really long infertility, it really, not that every woman who gets pregnant is not excited and appreciative and protective of that pregnancy and that baby. But when you've gone through really long infertility, it changes you and it changes how you feel about that baby and that pregnancy. You're like hyper
Mhm.
protective. And this was right at the beginning of COVID. And so, yeah, we conceived. I knew in my mind that I wanted a natural birth. And at the time, we were not in a place where like a home birth felt good in the home we were in. It just didn't feel peaceful and it just didn't feel right. And
Mhm.
so I was doing all my research. I didn't want like a traditional OB. I didn't want um, to just be like in a hospital type thing. And I was able to find, because usually insurance, unfortunately, in the US does not cover like midwifery and like birth
Mhm.
centers and all of that, and it can be very costly. And so I fortunately found like a little loophole that my insurance covered this midwifery group that like was under an umbrella of a hospital. The midwifery clinic was next to a hospital and so they were able to like work it to where
Mhm.
they could accept insurance. So I um got on with a midwifery group after seeing a traditional OB, I think 2 or 3 times, and both my husband and I were like, we just feel like a number, right? So
Mhm.
we found them a midwifery group and they checked a lot, like all the boxes, like all my questions, like, can I do an alternative to the glucose test? Like all of my birth choices, they said yes to, like all the things. And there was 4 midwives in the group. There was one elder midwife who I could tell she had been around for
Yeah.
forever doing midwifery. So she was very traditional in her ways. And I felt really connected to her. And then there were 3 others that were a bit more modern and newer within midwifery. Um, and so we go through my whole pregnancy, you know, we do the regular checks and everything, but they're very like great. They're great.
Mhm.
And towards the end of my pregnancy, I think I was 2 days shy of my 40 weeks and I had an appointment and, I was, I don't know, a couple centimeters dilated, just the regular whatever. And I was feeling really like I wanted this baby to come. At this point in my journey, I have not really deep dove on what it means to have no interventions in your pregnancy as far as like sweeps and how that can cascade into other interventions. And it just disrupts the normal physiological way that your baby and your body work together. And so I was a couple days shy, and at this point I'm trying all the things, right? Because I'm like, I'm 40 weeks. Like
Mm.
I'm only allowed to go to 42 weeks. And so I'm like, we're on a clock here. And so I'm like taking hikes. I'm like, um, I'm using breast pumps, like doing all of the things. And I go in for my appointment and I opt into having a membrane sweep. I remember thinking, okay, this is going to do it. This is going to jumpstart my birth. And we also lived about 2.5 hours away from the midwifery center and the birth center.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was also a factor of like, we're here, like we need to like make this happen. And so I get the membrane sweep. We stay in town overnight and I have a little bit of like shedding and I'm thinking, okay, it's going to happen. It doesn't happen. Birth does not start. My baby is not ready to come out. So I'm feeling kind of defeated. We drive back home and, you know,
Ooh, and not to mention, just to jump in here and
yeah,
say, all of this worry and all of this, I
so much
want labor to
stress.
start, all that stress is
Yeah.
not going to help labor start. And
Yeah.
so many first-time moms do that. Of course, like
Yeah.
I know, we all do it.
Yeah.
But what we really need is to be just
Just
watching a movie with
relax.
our husband and just like
Yes.
eating a good dinner and getting a nice rest. And like that's what's going to make labor start, not all of our
Yeah.
worrying that we do. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Hindsight is like 2020.
it so is,
And so when I like look back on younger me, I just laugh. I'm like, oh, so silly. But and like my mother-in-law was in town staying with us and she's excited and like every morning asking me like, has labor started? I'm like, you would know.
You would know.
So we go back home, days go on, and I'm getting more anxious and more frustrated and not thinking the baby will eventually come, right?
Mhm.
But I also have the medical timeline in my head stressing me out, and I'm feeling very out of control of my own body. And not that you can control birth, but I'm feeling like the control is in someone else's hands, and I really don't like that feeling. And so I think to myself, I don't want someone else dictating when I have to be induced because of this timeline. And so in my mind, I think I was 3 days shy of 42 weeks. And I think I just wake up one morning, I think it was a Tuesday. I wake up and I think, you know what? I'm going to make the choice to go in and get
Mm.
a mild induction because then at least it's my choice of my body and it's not someone else telling me I have to come in by this date. This is the way I'm like logically
Rationalizing.
convincing, rationalizing. Yeah. So my husband's like, I mean, if you're sure. So I ask who's on, like, which midwife is on duty? And it's the elder one. So I think, perfect. I'm going to go in. She's going to, like, she's going to know what to do because she's an elder midwife. It's going to be great. So we go in and they're like, we'll do a very low dosage of Pitocin. I'm like, okay, that sounds reasonable. So they start me on Pitocin. And again, I'm still so in my head, I'm like walking the birth center. I'm like doing laps through the night, like trying to like kickstart this labor. And my body is just not ready for it. And so the next day, my husband left and I was just in the room on my own. I was like on a birth ball and I had my headphones in. I was just really like in my own quiet space, like not in my head. And labor finally starts.
Wow. So you had been on Pitocin for how long? Like around, just give us a little timeline.
Probably about, I think I started around 5 p.m. the night before, and this was around
Mhm.
lunchtime.
Okay. And what was your experience too of Pitocin? Because some women, like the second any smidge of Pitocin is turned on, it's immediately unmanageable contractions that like they're like, epidural now. But then some
Right.
women are able to, everybody's experience of it is just a bit
Yeah.
different. I'm curious what yours was.
Because they started really low, I don't think I initially had
Gotcha. Okay.
that intensity that Pitocin brings on. It did eventually come.
Mhm.
But in the beginning, it was so low. They did try to give my body the opportunity to kind of notice what was trying to be forced upon it.
Gotcha.
And so I didn't have like that really intense Pitocin, like forced contraction feeling straight away. Thank
Mhm.
God, because it's awful. But once the Pitocin got turned up and then the contractions like really started ramping up, it was pretty intense, with very little break, if at all, any. So the labor starts intensifying and, a few hours go by and I had wanted to try being in the birth tub. So we tried going in there. I just, I felt so awful. I just felt so sick and overheated. And there's just so many people in the room, like constantly.
Seriously.
There's the midwife and I think two nurses in and out. And then there was a doula that the birth center provided, which was so unnecessary. Not saying doulas are unnecessary, but this particular doula was very unnecessary. I was like kind of directing her, like, can you put some lavender oil on my pillow? Like trying to tell her to do things for me.
Yeah, and also to mention that that's a lot of people in the room at once. And
So many. And my husband,
right. Yeah, and birth works best when a woman feels safe and not watched and
not watched.
not disturbed.
Yes.
And so that lack of privacy keeps our body from doing what labor is supposed to do. And
Yeah.
it's so funny because then we go, my body's not working, but really it's not being given the conditions that would allow
Right.
it to work. Like,
Right.
feeling safe, maybe, just you and your husband and maybe a midwife or a good doula sitting there just
Hmm.
in the room with you.
Right.
So many women,
Yeah.
we
And
forget this.
there's like a giant clock on the wall and like they're like, okay, it's been this long. Like, so you really get in your own head. Um,
Absolutely.
and you really start outsourcing your birth, your power, your entire experience. And because you get in your head, then you start looking to these professionals who know you
Mhm.
think they know what's best for you. And that's kind of what was happening. And, like how much more in the past 2 hours of this very intense labor have I progressed as far as dilation? And then, if it's not quote unquote enough, then you start doubting your body's abilities. And
Mm.
it's just such a slippery slope
Yes.
once you're there.
Thanks for bringing up cervical dilation because it's such a mind game. And I'm not saying cervical exams are never helpful, but they're helpful if you are very deep in labor and you still have that perception in your head of like, oh, my dilation equals how far along I am. And so say someone did tell you like, oh, well, you're 8 centimeters dilated and you think, oh, great, it's almost over, when in reality, that's not always the case. But when you hear you haven't progressed or whatever, when that's not even actually true, like just for example, I was told I was 5 centimeters dilated and then I was feeling the urge to push 30 minutes later. Like
Right.
we think you dilate a centimeter per hour because of some outdated made up things that the obstetric world made up in the 50s. And it's like, it's not true.
Yeah, totally,
But
totally.
we can so easily be convinced of it when you're deep in labor or, in early active labor even. and someone tells you you're not far along, and then
Yeah.
of course it's all a mind game. Like you take that
Yeah.
mental turn and you're like, I can't do this anymore,
Yeah. Or even that, like, you've stayed the same, maybe you've
Yes.
stayed, I think I had stayed the same, give or take, for like, 2 hours or something like that. Or,
Gotcha.
like, oh, you're still at 8. Well, yeah, but then your body could very quickly
Very quickly.
jump to,
Yeah.
but these are the things that you're not told. And if you don't
Mhm.
educate yourself, so it's really hard. I had gotten out of the bathtub or the birthing pool, and I remember feeling the sensation that I needed to go to the bathroom. And again, there's all of these people in the room, but like everything in your being is craving privacy. I just remember like having that sensation, and I don't know if it was I really did need to eliminate or if it was birth related, but I just remember sitting there and just feeling like stuck because my body was like, I'm not doing anything right now because all of these people are watching. And so then I got off and I was on this, I call it a table, I guess bed, a bed, but not like a comfortable bed because it was still in the birthing pool room, which was separate from my room in the birthing center. It was just really stiff, and I remember I was I was throwing up in between every contraction, and I just had no break. It was no break. It was so awful. And at one point, my waters released or began to release. In my birthing brain, I thought I had peed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I think I just peed. I was like saying this to the midwife or the nurse. And she's like, no, no, I think that was your waters. Like, we'll test it. So they tested it and they're like, no, that was your waters. So great. But also now another clock has started. And I was feeling this really, really intense, like sharp grinding sensation in my right pelvis. And I kept trying to describe it to them and tell them about this. Like I'm like, it's like really intense. And I think they thought I was just having like she doesn't know. This is her first time. That's just what it feels like. Like that's just what labor feels like. And it the pain was so bad that every time I would have a contraction, hurt, this very specific pinpointed pain would take over my brain. Like it was the only thing I could focus on because it was so intense. And they knew I did not want an epidural. I didn't even want one offered to me. That was in my birth plan. So they said, I know you don't want an epidural, but if you want something to take the edge off, we can give you fentanyl. And I don't know anything about fentanyl. I'm in the middle of labor. I'm like, you're telling me it's going to take the edge off? Great. Like, that's all you have to say to a birthing woman is that your pain can be decreased. And so I'm like, like, is it like how is it administered? Like, how do you give it to me? They're like, we'll just put it in your IV and it'll just feel like you had a shot of tequila. I'm like, great. That sounds fantastic right now. So they administer a dose of fentanyl. It does nothing for me, like from my perspective. My husband said it did seem like I got a little more relaxed and a little more like just kind of like goofy or like head in the clouds kind of from his like outside perspective. And but as far as the pain went, nothing. So at one point they suggest if we're not going to get back in the birthing pool, let's go back to your room so you can be more comfortable. Okay, great. So it's just like across the hall. So we're walking across the hall. More of my waters release as I'm walking because now I'm not just laying on a bed on my back or on my side. I'm moving as I
Mhm.
probably need to be doing. So we get back into my room and they just put me right back on a bed and they suggest using a peanut ball. And so they put a peanut ball under my legs or between my legs, and I'm still telling them about this pain I'm having. And I'm like, it feels like something is grinding into my pelvic bone. Well, they didn't suggest get up and try some movements. Let's check baby's position. Let's do any level of maneuvering or movement or nothing. Nothing of that sort was brought up. Um, and they're like, at some point, epidural did get brought up. So they say, okay, we're going to turn off the Pitocin. So they turn off the Pitocin in preparation for the epidural. And as soon as they turned off the Pitocin, I stopped throwing up. And it was like someone turned off the light switch and my
Mhm.
body went into calmness. My brain came back. I was famished. I asked my husband for some smoothie. I like chugged some smoothie. My body started like recalibrating and like
Mhm.
re-regulating itself as soon as the Pitocin was turned off. And I was like, it was like I came out of a fog. It was so wild. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like the breath of fresh air, the break I needed. So I'm feeling good. And because it's not forced Pitocin contractions, that pain stops because my body's not being forced into this contraction. And they tell my husband, this might be a good time for you to take a rest. So he lays down on a cot. I just laughed that like his rest was prioritized.
Yeah, no kidding.
So he lays down to take a rest and he falls asleep, not for long. And um I forget why, but they decided to turn the Pitocin back on. I can't remember why. I think they said they I think they had checked me and I think I was at like 8.5 or 9
Oh,
centimeters. Like
wow,
I was
yeah.
really
Mhm.
close. I was very close. And they said, okay, we're going to turn the Pitocin back on and we're just going to try pushing. As soon as the Pitocin turned back on with the next contraction, I had that pain again. And they're like, okay, push. And the pain was so consuming. I couldn't even attempt a push because my body, it hurts so bad. My body was just like overwhelmed with that pain. And I just said, I cannot push. And they're like, okay, then I think we need to talk about, doing an epidural and a C-section. And I just thought, like, at this point, I thought, so, I just felt so defeated and so broken. Like, my
Mhm.
body is just not doing what it needs to do, you know?
Mhm.
And it felt like what other option do I have? Because I'm not being given any other option aside from continue with this awful pain.
I'm so surprised. Why not just keep the Pitocin off if you were still contracting without it? Like, why?
I don't know. And I forgot to mention, so I at this point, because I'd been there so long, I've now cycled through all 4 midwives,
Oh, wow, okay.
their shifts. And so I was on the midwife whose shift it was the youngest, newest one, and I think she just didn't have the tools in her tool belt to handle a birth that wasn't going exactly
Mm,
as it should or, like, on a
yeah,
perfect timeline or whatever.
yeah.
And, she's like, "Oh, we have to be conscious of, like, your waters have broken at this point, and it was hours ago." And, she's, I think, trying to also give rationalize why we
Mhm.
need to speed this up or take this to the next level. And I just remember feeling like, sure, like if you're not giving me really any other option, not like I'm being forced, but you're not saying, well, we could try these things, or
Mhm.
it was just kind of like, this is where we're at. And so I remember just being like, just kind of like shrugging my shoulders and thinking, sure, go ahead. Like the cascade of interventions just happened so fast and one after another that it
Mhm.
just felt like there was no getting the birth I wanted back. So we might as well just, swipe it because it's not happening. And so they wake my husband up and they tell him, and he's just like, what? Like, I went to sleep and she was in great spirits. And now you're telling me that my wife needs a C-section? Like, is everything okay? Like, and as far as the monitoring goes, like, I wasn't in distress or need as far as like the baby wasn't in distress or need as far as the monitoring goes. So it was purely just you're in pain and the only solution we have for you is to just extract your baby via C-section.
Mm.
And so I very quickly went from having a epidural to getting the spinal tap and getting prepped for surgery. I remember they took me into the surgical room. Oh, and I do remember when the surgeon came, there's a woman, and I remember her asking the nurse and the midwives to step out of the room. And she wanted a moment to speak with me candidly. And I do appreciate that she did that because I think she could tell what was happening, but she also is hired to do a job and she's there for that job. But so she asked to speak to me privately and she just said, like, are you sure this is what you want to do? She asked if she could do a cervical check. She did. She said, I think that you're further along than what they are saying you're further along. I think she had said that she thought I was around like a 9, 9.5, somewhere in there. She's like, so are you sure that this is what you want to do? And
Oh.
at the time, all I could think about was, I can't keep moving forward with this pain, and no one's telling me what this pain might be, or any suggestions or solutions or recommendations to alleviate this pain. And I could even
Did you
feel it.
have the epidural at that point?
Yeah. And I could still
Yeah.
feel it with the epidural.
Wow. Wow.
I couldn't feel my legs, like, I couldn't feel anything else, but with every contraction, I could still feel that very localized pain. So, jump forward to explain that pain. What we found out after the surgery was that my baby's head was, like, cocked to the side,
Mm.
and he was being pushed into my pelvis, which knowing what I know now, we very well could have maneuvered him into a better birthing position, and then he probably would have just come right out. Like,
Mhm.
I was dilated, I was ready. But there was nothing suggested as far as movement based in any way, shape, or form. So I get prepped for surgery. I'm in the room. My husband isn't allowed in the room yet. I remember sitting there and thinking really sad about the situation. And really, I was concerned for my husband. I was concerned of, like, what kind of state of mind he was in, being separated from me and me going into surgery, something never fathomed was
Yeah.
on our radar, because why would it be? I
Right.
had a perfectly healthy pregnancy. I was perfectly healthy. The baby was perfectly healthy. There was no reason for it. So it was just this really, like, abrupt, intense situation, and I remember thinking, like, "Oh my gosh, he must be so scared for his wife and his baby." And so, he comes in and I'm prepped for surgery, and they do the surgery. Baby comes out, perfect Apgar test results, like this perfectly healthy baby. And I remember, like, turning my head and seeing the anesthesiologist. He has my placenta in a bowl and he's just kind of like palpating it. He's just kind of like messing with my placenta. And I just am like, this is so weird. Like, this is so weird. And, we put my son on me, and luckily he latches very soon. Like, once we get back to the room, and the surgery went well. But I was just so out of it. I'm like drugged up and exhausted and just all the things. So he was born, early AM, like 1 something, like later in the morning when the surgeon comes in to check. She tells me, your baby's head was cocked to the side. It was pushing into your pelvis. That's the pain that you were experiencing. But you do have a really small pelvis, and you'll need to have a C-section for all births going forward because your pelvis is just too small to be birthing.
Oh, I hate when I hear that.
And it's just the most ridiculous statement
Seriously,
to say, but especially as a medical professional, like, do you honestly, as a medical professional, do you honestly believe that? Like, you are an OB, you see a lot of women, you really believe that? Like, it's just, yeah,
they really do. And I also feel like it's kind of like they like to tell women that as like a, I'll let you down easy. Like, I know you really had a different birth in mind, but it wasn't your fault because your pelvis was small, but that
it's just
wasn't
your
true
body.
either.
It's
And
just
I
your
mean,
body.
you're beautiful proof of that because you go on to birth your baby.
Right.
It's just,
But in that
yeah, it breaks my
moment,
heart.
you believe them in
Of
that
course.
moment. And it's like, it's also, I think, a way for them to create this like savior mentality. Like,
Right.
I was saved, my baby was saved. But at no point through all of that did me or my baby need any saving. We were both perfectly fine, perfectly healthy before and after, during, all the things. Um, and so, but now they've created this mentality in my head of like, well, that's just the way it had to be. And now we know. Now we know for the future. And I remember when we left the birthing center slash hospital, which we were there 5 days because I had a C-section. I remember thinking and telling the nurses, like, you guys were so wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, if I have another baby, like, I would love for it to be at this same facility, like all the things. And so, yeah, we leave, we go home, more or less have like a fine postpartum and breastfeeding journey, like no problems with like bonding or latching. Thank goodness, because I know so many women who have C-sections like struggle in that. And we we didn't. So that I'm really thankful for. And we start to just have a quote unquote like normal, you know, uh entry into parenthood, having a baby, like we're following all the like doctor appointments and well child, whatever, and the schedule of baby shots and vaccinations and all the things. And at 6 months old, we moved states. And so thank goodness we had something that created a forced break in that cycle
Mm.
where I didn't have a pediatrician that we are already going to and all the things. So it was like this forced break in that. So we moved states. I hadn't set up a new pediatrician or anything. My son was about, I think he was about 8 or 9 months old, and he developed an ear infection. And I was treating it at home naturally and homeopathically. And after 3 days, my mother in law made me feel really bad that I wasn't taking him to a pediatrician. Like, I wasn't doing due diligence and I was letting my son suffer. And um, so I cave under that pressure and I take him into a pediatrician, and they acknowledge that he does, in fact, have an ear infection, but it appears that it's healing. Whatever you're doing at home is working. I say,
Nice.
great. But we still recommend that we get him started on antibiotics. And it was in that very moment, like it brings me chills every time I talk about it, because it was in that very moment where my motherly instincts just flashed like massive blinking red alarms of like, this is it. Like, it will always be like this. Everything you are doing is right. And they're still going to say that it's not enough and that there needs to be intervention. And I just, I thought, my gosh, you just acknowledge that what I am doing is healing my baby at home naturally. Why would I interrupt what is happening within his own body with no, like with something he doesn't need? His body is healing. And so I turned down the antibiotics, obviously. I said, I think I'm just gonna give it a few more days at home
Oh,
with what I'm doing and see what happens. Sure enough, it
yes.
heals.
That's such a
It's
beautiful story too. And that's not to say antibiotics are never something that can be helpful. Like, well, yeah, I acknowledge that sometimes
of
they can be.
course,
But you in that moment realized actually right now it isn't.
it's
His body is
unnecessary.
giving me right. His body is giving me every indication that he's healing. They even said it. And
Right,
so why would we mess with that process that's going well, you know?
right.
I agree.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I feel exactly the same way. Like Western medicine um, has a time and place,
Right.
certainly, but it doesn't have to always be the answer.
Right, both
And
things can be true. Like,
right,
it can be sometimes great and helpful, and we're so thankful that it's there, and it can be overused. It's like
yes,
both can exist at the same time, for sure.
exactly. So I turned it down. Now my motherly alarms are ignited,
Mm,
and I am waking up even more so to the realities of the system that we often get trapped in and or blindsided by or just unaware what's happening, when it
mhm.
usually is not that blatant, but in that moment it was very obvious. And something in me woke up and I was like, I need to trust my intuition as a mother and a woman. And so that was the fire that started to light within me. And then when he was about a year and a half, I got pregnant again. And I knew I wanted it to be different. And at this point, like I said, like now I'm awake to the system, the medical system, and like the things that maybe they don't have our best interests at heart. And with that pregnancy, I had told my husband, like, I really feel like I want a home birth. And he was nervous because of what we were told when, my son was born, that I would need C-sections like going forward. But something in me just said, like, I don't know that that's true. Like, I want to do more, I want to do more research on this because I know that there are women who have had C-sections and then birthed babies. And so what makes them different from me? If other women can do it, I'm sure I could do it. And he was like, well, I mean, it's your body. So, like, I trust you and it's your body. So it's whatever you want to do. But he was nervous. Um, and we, at the time, like right around the same time, we had decided to move to another country. We decided to move to Mexico, to the Baja Peninsula. And I had it in my head that I would hire a midwife and I would have a home birth, but that I still needed like some level of assistance or, I don't know, help. I had one ultrasound to confirm the pregnancy. But because we were moving, once again, it was like this forced break in continuing with medical checks because we were moving. And so I was like, well, I don't want to like establish care and all of that if we're not even going to be here. So I kept putting off, like the clinic kept calling me and being like, did you want to schedule another check, like another ultrasound, et cetera, et cetera. And I kept just being like, well, I think I'm going to find a midwife, like blah, blah, blah. And they would like give me recommendations and people who, they knew did that in the area that were recommended. And I was like, okay, like I'll look into it. And I just kind of kept putting it off. And um, so then we ended up moving and I had put in a Facebook group to the area we were moving to, like that I was looking for a midwife. This was my second pregnancy, but I wanted a home birth. And I was suggested to connect with this woman there. Her name is Ilka. And so I reached out to her and turns out she used to be a midwife, like when she was in the States and a doula and then I had seen like she had free birthed her two previous babies and she was pregnant with her third and having a sovereign pregnancy. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. And she used to be a midwife. Like, that's wild. And so I started listening to podcasts. I started listening to the Free Birth Society podcast. And I was very intentional about listening to other women who walked the path I have walked of having a C-section and then choosing a natural birth after. And at this point, I still think I want a midwife. But just hearing other women's stories is so empowering and you start to hear patterns. And then I started connecting the dots to my own birth of the same pattern and your mind just explodes. I was like, my gosh, my story is not unique.
No,
And
exactly. Yes.
that was so relieving because if my story is not unique, then that means my story can continue to not be unique and I can walk the same path as these other women and I can get out of what I was told. And so, and also you just see like the ridiculousness in it when you see the patterns and how
Right.
identical stories are. You're like, it's a racket.
You can start to see right through it. Yeah. That's exactly why I started this podcast is the same experience. Like I listened to so many podcasts when I was preparing for my next birth. And your brain, it's such a good way to learn. It makes me go like, well, of course Jesus used stories to tell people everything because people learn through storytelling. Like the more you hear this stuff over and over again, your brain starts to like you said, recognize patterns and you just absorb, you're like a sponge. You absorb all of that knowledge. And even if it's just in the background while you're like cooking dinner or while you're folding
Yeah.
some laundry, that's like you're learning. Like I think that's the best birth prep is just listening to women's positive
Yes.
birth stories. And
Yes.
then it does something to your subconscious brain where all of a sudden, 30 episodes later, at 30 days later, you're like, whoa, like my brain has changed the way it thinks about this. You're no longer trying to convince yourself that natural birth is possible. You really genuinely believe it in your brain and in your body. Yeah.
1,000%.
Love that.
1,000%. Because you're like, these women are all living proof.
Right.
It's proof. I'm not just being told by a
Mhm.
doctor or a midwife or whatever. They're proof. Like they
Mhm.
did it and it worked. And so, yeah, like you said, you're no longer trying to convince your brain, your logical brain. Your brain is like, here's the data.
Yes. Yes. I love that so much.
And so, yeah, that was really like, and I always kind of laugh when people think that when you take a sovereign approach to pregnancy and or birth, that it's like lazy or not caring, or you're not doing enough and you're just being too like lackadaisy about it. And I'm like, no way. I did so much mental prep to get to a place where I felt confident and powerful enough to take control of my pregnancy and my birth experience, because I was convinced completely differently. Like I was in a completely different headspace from my first birth to my second birth. And it took a complete like unlearning and then relearning, like a complete rewiring of my brain, which is not a small feat.
Right.
And so, um, so yeah, I connected with Ilka and we moved to Baja, Mexico. And um, by the time we got there, she had free birthed her third baby now. And we ended up living like 5 minutes from each other. And,
That.
and now at this point, I've kind of decided maybe I don't need a midwife. Maybe I can actually just do this on my own. My husband's, again, kind of apprehensive about it, but he's like, I mean, I support you. It's your body. But he's got all these like what ifs in his brain. And making that connection with her and her husband and her children, and it just becoming really like normalized. Just these are just normal people. They don't have more credentials. They don't have more, you know, anything special. They're just normal people, because he's not listening to all the podcasts that
Right.
I'm listening to. Um, I think that helped him realize, like, okay, it is possible and fine. And so, yeah, it was just really, it was so nice having a pregnancy where there's no stress, there's no timeline, there's no checkups, there's no one telling me, where my body's at or where my baby's at or how, there's no clock. Like there's just intuition and feeling good in my body. And it was just such a breath of fresh air. And so going into it, so 40 weeks came and it's just such a night and day difference where my mind was at with my first versus my second. Because I didn't have that background noise at 40 weeks, I felt great. I, Everyone was like, oh, I'm sure you're so ready. And I said, I could go another 2 weeks and be fine. Like I'm in no rush. I am in no hurry. The baby will come when it's ready. I just felt so relaxed about it. No pressure. And I was 40 weeks and 5 days when I think it was around midnight. I was sleeping and I woke up like really abruptly. I was having a dream, and in my dream, some sort of something with water happened. Well, my waters had started releasing just a little. And so I woke up and like instantly was like, oh, okay. Did I just pee? Or I got up and I thought, no, that it's trickling. Like it's trickling and I'm not peeing right now. So my husband's still asleep and I just get up and I go to the bathroom and I like clean up a little. And then I start to get like excited. And then I remember in a training I had listened to about like sovereign birth and birthing at home, they talked about not getting excited and telling yourself it could be days. This is just the beginning. It is not a race. It is like a marathon. Like you're in it for the long haul. So save your excitement, save your energy. So I remember getting kind of excited and then thinking, okay, no, I don't feel any contractions. I don't feel any like big labor happening. So I'm going to try and just rest. So I do my best to like go back to sleep, rest as much as possible with like the excitement of it. We wake up the next morning and I just casually tell my husband, like, things are starting. It could be days. We don't know. And he's like, okay, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I just want to have a good day as a family, like an ordinary day, but this could be my last day as a mother of one baby earthside.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, but also I'm actively like leaking waters. So that's kind of inconvenient. So my friend Ilka, she tells me just stay hydrated, just keep, stay really
Mm-hmm.
hydrated because you are leaking waters, but they'll replenish. So like there's no worry there. Like, okay, great, not a problem. So we decide to go to the beach for the day, to play in the ocean and be in a swimsuit because I'm just leaking water. And it was just such a beautiful day. The last day with my son by himself, like as a single child. And we played in the ocean. And I just really was like in the moment, like soaking it all up. And I would I'm like holding him, playing in the ocean, then I would have like a contraction, but they were so casual and I didn't really have to like work through them. And when we got home, like I put him down for a nap and then like the contractions would kind of like rev up more. So like I couldn't really rest while he was resting. And then when he like woke up, they would like kind of die back down and be very inconsistent and much more mild. And we went to bed. My contractions like revved back up. And as it does, like you're on mom mode and then you're
Right.
relaxed. And so, yeah, that that happened for that full day. And then the next day, we just took it really easy. I could tell things were I could just tell it was gonna happen that next day. My body, like my belly had really dropped, just felt I didn't have the same energy I had the day before. And it was really just like slowing down. And same thing, I put my son down for a nap. Was getting like all the last little things like taken care of for my birth space and everything. And things revved back up. He woke up from his nap, they slowed down. But then in the evening, it started. The contractions started becoming more consistent and longer and more intense to the point where I would have to like brace myself at the table as I was like playing outside with my son. And I couldn't focus as much on him. My brain just like
Mm.
took over and I would have to like really focus within. And so I knew like, okay, it's actually happening now. And so we had a friend that had come into town to help out with our son because I was like, I don't, he was only 2 at the time and I didn't know what his needs would be. And so I text her, I said, hey, it's happening. Like, I
Mm.
think it would be good if you came over. So my husband cooked, my son, well, he cooked us all dinner, but I was not eating.
Mm.
and and we just kind of we just lived normally. And while I was like starting early labor and I was just kind of left alone to like do whatever I needed to do. And then my son ate his dinner, presumably. I don't know. I was in labor land. And but then I remember um my husband saying he was gonna uh put my son in the shower before bed. And I said like, oh, I'll get in with him because that kind of sounds nice. And I feel like I want these last moments with him. So um my son and I took a shower together and I was like pretty deep in labor land as far as like mentally, but I remember like, giving my son, and he was so unfazed by it. And I remember like giving him kisses and telling him good night. And then my husband, took him and put him in bed and got him to sleep. And I got out of the shower at some point, got into the birth pool, and yeah, just like labored in there for a few hours and was like more or less like left to my own. I was undisturbed. Like my friend was there, but my son went to sleep fine and was sleeping. So she just, she like got some pictures or some video, or would help my husband in like, refreshing my water, or my husband, getting a cool washcloth, and my husband would like use the cool washcloth on me. Uh, but it was just really a quiet, peaceful, undisturbed. At around, I think it was around 11:30 PM, I had started to hit transition, and I got really scared, and I told my husband, "I think I need you to call Ilka." And so he calls my friend Ilka, and she comes over, and she's got her baby strapped to her, and she comes in, and all she does is tell me how great I'm doing and read me the affirmations I've put up on my wall, and just witness me as like another sovereign mom, another, woman who has walked through this 3 times, birthing on her own, just with her husband there. And she just witnesses me. She doesn't try and take up any space. She doesn't try and be an authority. She doesn't touch me. She literally just witnesses me. And it was all I needed, was to be told, like, "You're doing it. You're doing it, and it's beautiful. Just keep doing it." And is like, that's what women need. They don't need the power taken from them. They just need to be reminded how powerful they are. And that's all she did. And then sure enough, at one point I was like, "I don't think I'm doing it right." And she's like, "You are doing it." And I was like, I don't think the baby's like coming down or something." And she's like, "Then reach down and feel, like self exam." And, like my, my brain was trying to outsource, and she was just handing it right back to me and being like, you you feel like, you know and I just so appreciate that, because she could have, I was asking, like, more or less giving permission, like, someone tell me if I'm doing this correctly, someone of authority who's done this before, tell me if I'm doing it the right way. And she's like, "You can tell if you're doing it. I mean, reach down and do you feel something?" And sure sure enough, I felt my baby, and I was like, "Oh yeah, my baby's right there." And so um the head started crowning, and I just got this really intense sensation to push. I'm assuming it was like the fetal ejection reflex, because I hadn't done any pushing up until this point, and the baby's head was crowning. And so that next contraction, I did a really big push, and it's this is so funny. My son, because now my daughter, who's my second born, she asks to watch this very specific moment of video every single day. So we watch this almost every single day. And at that point, I'm pushing, and it's my baby's head is like halfway out, and I scream like, "Stop moving." I'm telling the baby to stop moving, because I'm assuming that, she's doing what she's supposed to be doing to get her body out of me. And then I scream, "Somebody help." And I used to really judge myself for that moment. I really hated that I wasn't in my power in that moment and that I was like asking for help. I used to hate it. And my son, the first time he saw that video, he just started busting up laughing. He thought it was the funniest thing. And at first I was like kind of taken aback, like, why are you laughing at that? Like, I'm screaming for help in a moment of need, like, why are you laughing at that? And then the more it happened, the more he would giggle every time he watched this moment. I started to realize it actually is quite funny that the baby's head is halfway out and I'm asking for help because who is going to help me right then? I'm actively doing it. There's no help is needed. And so I just really appreciate my son and his pureness and how matter of fact children are because he can see in the video, like, you don't need help. The baby is coming out, mom. Like,
Yeah.
why would you be screaming for help? And
Mhm.
so now when I see that part of the video, I don't have the same judgments on myself as I did before. And so, yeah, I say, like, somebody help. And you hear my friend in the background just say, like, you're doing it. Your baby is coming out. And I take a break, I take a breath, pause, and then on the next contraction, I do one more push and my baby fully comes out, her shoulders, her entire body, and I pick her up and I can't lift her all the way up and she has a nuptial cord. And so I undo her nuptial cord and I bring her to my chest and she's fine. She's perfect. She takes a moment. She takes, I think, a minute to let out a cry, and she lets out a cry. We sit in the tub for a couple of minutes, and then I decide to get out of the tub. Um, and my friend, my my friend says, like, there does seem to be like a bit of blood, but not anything alarming. But you may just like want to get out of water. So I stand up, and when I stand up, my placenta comes out, and so we put the placenta in a bowl, and it was just so nice to just, like, get into bed,
Mm.
my bed with my brand new baby, and she instantly latches, and once the cord turned white, we tied it off and cut it, and, yeah, and then the next morning, my son woke up he slept through the entire thing. I don't know how that was even possible, but he slept through the whole thing. My husband brings him into our bed, and he just acts there's no surprise. He's like, "Yeah, of course. Like, she's here." Just so, like, matter of fact, like, she's always been a part of this family, and she's here. Like, okay, like, let's go on with our day. Yeah, it just felt so like, the name of your podcast is so perfect because it just felt so redemptive to after what I went through with my son, to then have that birth without complication and to like fully be in my power even when I was doubting myself. It was just such a testament of like, you can do this. And also the reminder of like, there's only one way and it's through. Like, you just have to go through. There's no saving necessary. There's no intervention needed. You just have to walk through it, and it feels really scary at times, but you just have to walk through it. So, yeah.
Oh, what a beautiful story. It must feel like such a full circle moment to have listened to so many podcasts while you were pregnant and preparing, and then to now, be on the other side and like inspiring other women to just know what's possible. Like that's what pregnancy and birth can look like, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
And so many
whenever
women don't
people,
even
like
know.
they don't even know, like, when they hear
Mhm.
that I have done this on my own once, they're shook, and then when they hear that my previous was a C-section, they're just like mind blown. They're like, I didn't know that was possible. And I'm like, anything is possible. You just have to make
Yes.
the decision.
Yes. Yes, you're living proof it's possible.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of learning and a lot of unlearning and taking responsibility and healing. And I saw something on Instagram a while ago that was like, we shouldn't be calling births redemptive because nothing about your next birth is going to redeem what happened in your birth before. And it doesn't. It doesn't change the way our previous births might have been, but something in us does heal when we birth our babies in the way we wanted to and powerfully and with dignity and with strength, and it is healing. And like, I don't know how you felt, but during pregnancy, you're building all those pathways and you're learning to believe that this is possible. But then when you finally do it and then you're on the other side of it, it's like everything falls into place and clicks then. And it goes, whoa, that's what they were all meaning. Like, now I understand. And this is
Yeah.
what physiological birth is. And it requires privacy and a feeling of safety and just respecting that your body does know what to do. You just have to give it the things that it needs in order to do it.
Yeah.
And
It's
it
so
will.
funny. During the birth at one point I had said, like, why did I choose to do this? And, because you're just like, it's the sensations are so strong and it feels so hard at the end. And and there's no escaping it. And
Mhm.
but the moment my daughter was born, the moment I pulled her to my chest, the moment I came out of that birthing brain, that primal state, and realized, my goodness, I just did this. I instantly was like, I could do this 1,000 more times. Like that, the high, the endorphins that your brain gets from a physiological birth is, I don't even know how to explain it. It's unmatched. Like there's nothing that compares to that feeling the moment after you do it. That you're just like, my gosh, like my body did this with without anything outside of it. Like my body did this. And I walked through that. And I, even in the hardest moment, my body still knew what to do. It didn't need anything. Even when my brain was screaming for
Mhm.
help, when my brain wasn't convinced, my body still did it. It's just
Oh,
like such a testament to like women's bodies and how we are
amen.
built perfectly to birth our babies.
Yes, I agree 1000%. And it just reminds me of going on a bear hunt. You can't, the book, do you know the
Oh,
kids' book, We're Going
no.
on a Bear Hunt? Yeah, it's just a kid's book, but you can't go over it. You can't go under it. You've got to go through it. And I don't know, I read it with my kids all the time.
Yeah.
And no, but that's birth, there's no easy way out of it. You just, in those deep, deep, hard moments when you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this. There's no way except for through. And then you do. And you think you can't, but you can. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It is amazing. And I think it's also, I've said this to so many women and to my husband too. Like, I'm so glad I was at home and around safe people. And by safe, I mean mentally, they understood my needs and desires for my birth and respected them, because there were multiple moments in my daughter's birth where I did try and outsource. And if I hadn't been around people who respected me and my birthing choices and the power and strength that my body has and understood physiological birth, then they very easily could have taken that power. And I think that's where a lot of women not go wrong, but just don't know how important it is who is around them during birth. Because I don't think that a free birth or a sovereign birth or an unattended birth is for everybody. But if you're going to have someone there, you need to make sure that they're not going to take your power in those vulnerable moments, because more times than not, those moments will come.
Right. They really will.
Yeah.
What a beautiful story. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. And I do have one final question.
Okay.
If you had a woman sitting in front of you right now and she has had a birth experience, maybe like yours, where it just didn't go the way she wanted and she really wanted a natural birth and it didn't happen. And now she's pregnant again and she really, really wants to have a natural birth now. What would you tell her?
I would say the first thing is to do the research. Like, you need to educate. You need to take it into your own hands and you need to educate yourself, not from one point of view, but from all points of view, and listen to other women's experiences and be open to other stories and other paths, and then sit with all of that knowledge and feel what feels right for you and your body and your birth vision. And don't be afraid to think outside the box. Like, if you even have an inkling of wanting to do it differently the next time, listen to that, respect that, and go, well, what would that look like? Like, be curious enough to even think about what that would look like, and then start researching and educating yourself on what that could look like and how that could be made possible, because it is possible more times than not, but the work has to be done and you have to take it into your own hands and be responsible for your birth experience.
Amazing. Yes. Amen. I have just had so much fun talking to you. And thank you for sharing your stories and being so open.
Yeah.
And I just know that this story will reach the ears of the women it's meant to reach. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And if anyone wants to follow along, I'm just a few weeks or 2 months away from my next experience. And I'm so excited to see how different or similar it may or may not be. And yeah, I'm so excited to do it again and like feel all the things again now that I've done it once.
Oh yeah. We're gonna have to have you back on after that birth.
Compare notes.
Yes. Oh, I can't wait. Well, thank you, Kelly.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for listening to Your Redemptive Birth. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review on your listening platform to help this podcast reach the women it needs to reach. If you have a redemptive birth story you would like to share, please email me at sarah@yourredemptivebirth.com. I would love to hear from you. Let's spread the redemptive birth word together.